What is up, mortals? It is I, the Spirit of Ice, here with a new video for you today. Welcome to Part 2, Season 1 of What If Deku Was a Green Lantern. I just wanted to greet you guys by saying sit back, relax, you're in for a treat. So we begin. It had now been a few days since Izuku Midoriya, the proper host of Ion, had been graciously invited into the house of Toshinori Yagi, or as he had to remind himself to call him, All Might. He still had a bit of trouble calling someone by their proper name, being fused with a god and all, but he was making progress. Actually, he was making progress in all parts of his new life, especially the aspect of construct creation. Of course, this was evident by the fact that there was a wide assortment of emerald objects scattered throughout the entire apartment. They had found that anything Izuku thought strongly about, such as specific tools that heroes used or certain games he liked to play, he created, regardless of whether he wanted to or not. The fact that the constructs were permanent was just a minor roadblock that he had been able to circumvent, not that All Might agreed with that assessment.
Young Midoriya, are you sure that this is the best solution to our spacing issue?
All Might asked him as the living statue of a man walked into the room, holding 2 cups of hot cocoa and staring at the so-called solution, which was actually a construct of a workbench that was paired with a giant green sledgehammer, which was used to destroy the smaller construct.
I'm glad you're getting more creative with your powers, but this just seems like creating another problem to fix the original problem.
I'll admit, this isn't the most ideal scenario,
Izuku told himself while sitting on the ground in a meditative position.
But it really can't be helped. My creations are permanent, and I keep popping constructs out like Russian nesting dolls. So the things I make can't be destroyed unless by a bomb or something else I make. Unless you prefer to purchase some grenades and detonate them in here every day.
Good lord! Are they that durable?
All Might asked with a flinch before regaining his composure.
Well, Powerloader said he couldn't break your USJ constructs in his lab, but I thought his tools were just going through wear and tear. Oh, I made us some hot chocolate, by the way.
The Greenette looked at his teacher with a grateful look on his face, while getting up and accepting the mug.
Thank you, All Might. I haven't had cocoa in 2 months. I always forgot to buy it when I went out.
Well, I'm glad I could make your day,
the pro hero said with a smile.
Hey, since I've got your attention, I wanted to talk to you about the sports festival. As I'm sure you know, it's coming up soon, and, well, do you think you'll be able to compete in it?
Izuku moaned a bit as he gulped down his cocoa before responding.
Honestly, I have an idea that could allow me to participate in it, but I'd have to use a construct for it to work. Basically, I'd use a form of astral projection to make a copy of myself and project my consciousness into it. I'd been able to create constructs that follow my instructions and let me see things through their eyes in the past, so I figure I can do it again for the festival. Also, this cocoa is amazing. Where do you get this, Mr. All Might?
The grinning giant laughed heartily at the young boy's question.
I ordered it online through a certain store menu. I'll send you the link later. And it's great that you found a way to make it to the sports festival, in a sense, at least. Though I do have to ask, will you have to destroy that construct of you with a hammer? Because if so, well, we'll need to get rid of it. So I could do it if it's too big a deal for you.
Yes. I think that would be best, I think.
The torchbearer replied with a small shake of his head.
Could you ask Nesu if my solution is okay, since I technically won't be there?
Toshinori nodded.
Of course. Oh, I'm sure he'll agree with your solution since you'll be there mentally.
Suddenly the man's eyes widened.
Oh! Also, your mother called. She'll be visiting around lunchtime.
I know. She texted me,
Izuku said with a small smile.
It'll be nice to see her again. I haven't seen her since last Friday when Ophidian and All for One attacked. we didn't exactly give her a proper heads up when you suddenly whisked me away to your house. I mean, I know I went along with it too, but still, it couldn't have been easy on her.
Yes, I'm sure this sudden change was difficult for her. I do feel bad about it, but I was also scared of the possibility of All for One seeking revenge. So I figured the best place was with me. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision made somewhat rashly, but I will stand by it.
The number one pro-hero looked a bit guilty, but both he and the human Ion understood that the alternative was that she was placed in an incredible amount of danger, considering the fact that Ophidian would surely hunger for the emerald light Izuku had within him. In the event they came for the boy, it would be best to take him on in a scenario where Mrs. Midoriya wasn't present, and a place where the pros have coordinates to.
Hate to leave on such a depressing note, but school's starting soon and I need to get going. I'll be sure to bring back any assignments you miss. And don't worry. I'm sure you'll get your powers under control and get back to class soon. You may even learn how to unmake constructs before the sports festival.
With a simple goodbye, All Might made his way out of the house and began on his journey to UA. It was the first day back after the USJ incident, and he was sure the students would have lots of comments about what they'd seen and heard. Not to mention they'd surely noticed the lack of their green-haired classmate. He'd need to be mentally sharp if he was going to both explain everything in the agreed-upon fashion and handle the students who had heard what All for One had said. Hopefully he'd be able to convince them that what was said was a lie. He just hoped that Aizawa would be convincing when he gave them the initial explanation. Honey is a free browser extension available on Google, Opera, Firefox, Safari. If it has a browser, it has Honey. Honey automatically saves you money when you check out on sites like Amazon, Papa John's, and Kohl's. Wherever you shop, it's a good chance that Honey can save you money. All you have to do when you're checking out at these stores is click that little orange button and it'll scan the entire internet and find discounts for you. If there is a coupon code, they will find it. And if there's not a coupon code, you can rest assured that you're getting the best price possible. If you install Honey right now, you can save like $50 to $100 on your shopping doing nothing. There's literally no reason not to install Honey. It takes 2 clicks, 10 million people use it, 100,000 5-star reviews. Unless you hate money, you should install Honey. Half an hour later, in Class 1A's classroom, all 19 of the present students were all experiencing a collective sense of confusion. Their questions, while somewhat varied across all of them, all stemmed from the same source. They were all concerned about what they had experienced at the USJ. For some of them, the ones who hadn't been in the center plaza but were instead in one of the zones, such as Tokoyami and Sero, they simply wanted to know how exactly the villains had gotten inside. For others, such as Uraraka, Todoroki, and the rest of the students who had been nearby the entrance and overheard All for One's remarks, they wanted to know what the hell the villain had meant by all of that. Had he been lying, or was there some truth to his words? And finally, there were those scant few people who knew what happened, as in they had greater insight into the events in question, but were still perplexed by the exact series of events, and wanted to know what happened to Midoriya, who was largely forgotten at the moment. And Aizawa knew he'd have to do his best to answer all of their questions. Great. Alright, look. Instantly all eyes were on the black-haired pro. I know you all have questions about last Friday, but honestly, I don't have enough energy to answer everything right now. Now, All Might got tasked with explaining certain things to you all in greater detail later. But I'll give you all a basic rundown of what happened. For starters, we've determined that the media breach a few days prior was actually a distraction to steal one of our schedules, which the League of Villains leader, Tamura Shigaraki, used to coordinate their plan of attack. They used a warp quirk user by the name of Kurogiri in combination with an electric quirk to get in and cut us off from the outside world. The primary goal was to kill All Might, which they were going to achieve by using some sort of modified superperson called a Nomu. Now, while this Nomu was strong, it seemed ultimately unable to finish him off, but All Might couldn't beat it either. Now, at some point during the affair, there was a sudden surge of energy that caused a series of earthquakes and tremors that spread throughout the entire facility. Evidently, this was caused by a unique reaction that occurred when Midoriya and Togeda used their powers together, supercharging Midoriya and leaving him immobile in the shipwreck zone. Fortunately, Togeda was able to retreat along with Mineta and Kirishima, causing the tremors to subside. Unfortunately, that's where the bad part starts. While all that was happening, the true leader of the League of Villains, the thought-to-be-dead crime lord All For One, made a surprise appearance with a brand new power of his own. Apparently, his quirk allows him to steal and mix quirks from other people, so this was likely a new power he'd recently stolen. He'd actually made mention of the fact that the power was liberating for him, which supports this theory. Even All Might and I were struggling to beat him since he was able to create indestructible barriers that my quirk couldn't work on. And it looked like he might actually kill us. But then Midoriya, having recovered from his earlier power spike, was able to come through in the 11th hour and use all of his power to force him out of the building. He would have likely come back, but at that point the rest of the staff arrived, and it's assumed that he knew he was outnumbered and retreated along with Shigaraki, Kurogiri, and the Nomu. At least, we didn't find them when we searched for them afterward. Now, I'm sure we'd all like to put this incident behind us, so let's move on to the upcoming sports festival. We sent you an email, but in case you didn't get it, the festival is in 2 weeks, so we'll be allowing full access to all the gyms and artificial cities for the time being to allow you to train. With that out of the way, let's move on to... Yes, Todoroki?
The heterochromatic teen swiftly raised his hand in the middle of Aizawa's recap while donning an annoyed look on his face. You're actively avoiding the main topic of discussion. I don't know about the others, but I'm not going to ignore what that all-for-one bastard said. He mentioned things about All Might and Midoriya being quirkless before now, and his powers were similar to Midoriya's and Togeda's. Hell, he said his power came from an orange ring, and his outfit had a specific logo on it. Just like the blue and green ones Togeda and Midoriya had on theirs. Not to mention, Togeda's ring was messing with his, the opposite of the effect it had on Midoriya's. He even talked to the lantern he was holding, and acted as if it were alive. Similar to how Midoriya talked to that giant whale thing you summoned, which shook the entire facility, mind you, before he fused with it, and got that new armor and power boost, which allowed him to one-shot that Orphidian thing All For One had. Maybe we could write off some of his words as lies to taunt All Might, but there's no way, on God's green earth, that all of that was pure coincidence. For that matter, where is Midoriya? He disappeared after the fact and isn't here today. And don't bullcrap us with some stupid explanation like, he's just out sick today. The whole class went silent as a palpable tension filled the room. It seemed as if Todoroki and Aizawa might actually engage in a real fight with the glares they were giving each other. And then, just as the class was holding its breath in anticipation and anxiety, Aizawa gave his anger-filled response. That's a hell of a lot of disrespect on your part, Todoroki. You're a student here. Never take that tone with a teacher again, no matter how vindicated you feel. And don't you dare demand information on another student's personal life, or I'll call your father to come pick you up in the middle of the damn day. You're not remotely entitled to such sensitive information. If Midoriya or Togeda want to discuss what they know, you can ask either of them. If they don't want to answer, too bad. Speak out of turn like that again, and you'll run the risk of getting expelled. Eventually, the double quirk teen averted his gaze. Of course. My apologies, Mr. Aizawa. Please excuse my interruption. The teacher nodded. Now then, if there are no more distractions, let's get on with the lesson. If you wish to discuss anything about All For One specifically, All Might will be willing to answer some of your questions later. After that, there were no more interruptions. If anyone was thinking about asking for the specifics, they were silenced by Aizawa's rant. After all, they realized they had no right to ask about something so personal, at least not without Midoriya himself present. If they wanted to know about the Green Lantern, they'd need to ask him about it personally. Hours later, at about 1 o'clock, Inko Midoriya had finally made her way to All Might's apartment.
On the one hand, she was relieved to know that her son was the one to greet her, instantly curing her anxieties and worries. But on the other hand, she was a bit disappointed. This was the All Might's apartment, so she'd been hoping to be greeted by the man in question.
Come on in, Mom,
Izuku said as he opened the door for her to step inside, which she promptly did in awe. It was only natural, after all. Izuku was starstruck the first time he'd stepped in here as well.
This place is so cool,
the woman said as she took the side in.
And you've been here for the past 4 days? How was it?
I'm not gonna lie to you, Mom.
It's been so cool,
the boy said with glee evident in his tone as he shared the sights with his mother. After a few minutes of just staring at all the different rooms, the duo of mother and son took the chance to start catching up, with Izuku giving her a brief rundown of how his power went through an awakening, resulting in a permanent aspect of his powers that made it necessary for him to stay away from school for a bit until he got it under control. As for why he was staying with All Might specifically, well, the official story was that the pro had felt responsible for his awakening because of his inability to handle the ringleader of the villain group that had attacked them at the USJ, resulting in the blonde man offering to house him while he learned to utilize this aspect of his quirk properly. It was certainly a very touching moment on behalf of the #1 hero in all of Japan, though it was unfortunately interrupted by the greenette's stomach growling at the end of the explanation.
Oh, don't worry. I brought us some katsudon for lunch, sweetie,
his mom explained with a smile as she held up a to-go bag from their favorite restaurant.
Oh, thanks, Mom. I'm actually pretty hungry since I skipped breakfast. I figured as much. You get so forgetful when you're focusing, sweetie, so I made sure to get extra.
As the two were eating, they began discussing the upcoming sports festival, with Izuku explaining both the problem he was having and his solution. They both agreed that it made sense, but Inko was a little confused as to why he couldn't just go in normally.
I mean, if the issue is that your little creations are permanent now, couldn't you just try to not make anything unless absolutely necessary?
She asked in between bites.
It's not that simple. See, my ring was originally used to turn my willpower into a tangible shape, but since it broke with my awakening, there's nothing to filter out my thoughts. If I get too excited when thinking about something, I'll accidentally create it. Actually, look in my bowl. I accidentally made more katsudon without even realizing it,
he explained as she peered into his to-go container. There were, in fact, green pork cutlets mixed into the rice.
I see the problem. And you think you can avoid it if you focus all your thoughts into making what boils down to a robot of yourself that you can pilot from here. More or less, yeah. I mean, I've been able to create energy doubles before that I needed to visually guide, and I've been able to guide robotic constructs by attaching a camera to their head and relaying the video through a specially constructed phone. This would just be a combination of those two things. I was actually thinking of practicing it today if you want to see a demonstration. Well, I would like to make sure that this complicated thing doesn't hurt you, so I suppose it would be a good idea to supervise you. Maybe it could eat your special katsudon?
Izuku chuckled at her joke before wiping his mouth. It would be simple enough to create an energy avatar, and he could just make it small enough to smash apart from when he is done with it.
Alright. This can get pretty bright, so you may want to cover your eyes.
She nodded before shielding her eyes with her arm.
Izuku Droid Mini Version! Materialize!
With a mighty shout, a viridescent light enshrouded the interior of All Might's apartment, blinding its occupants. When it died down, Inko immediately took note of two things. A small action figure that looked identical to her son and was seemingly moving on its own, and her son's glazed-over eyes that seemed to have an emerald haze over them.
I did it, Mom!
Little Izuku said in a high-pitched voice, making the mother squeal in delight.
Oh, Izuku, it's so cute!
But before she could even finish her sentence, a purple light began to fill the room. It gathered off to the side, claiming the attention of the woman and her miniature child before forming into a sort of sphere that created what appeared to be 3 silhouettes. As the sphere started dissipating, the forms became clearer, slowly turning into shapes Izuku recognized, along with a third mysterious woman? Of course, Izuku wasn't certain that it was the same person, but he was certain that it was him. He wouldn't forget that day after all, so, with a slightly hesitant voice, he inquired to see if it was indeed the same person.
Can't that... that you?
The little blue man nodded his head and smiled in relief.
Yes, it is, Izuku. After so long, it is good to see you again. And it makes me beyond elated to see that you have merged with Ion. But for now, I believe we should tell you what we've been up to. After all, I am certain that you are unfamiliar with Indigo One.
Thank you for indulging yourselves in all this information thus far. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, there are a few things I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, if you're in the mood for some great storytelling, We the Celestials has you covered. We the Celestials, My Hero Academia, and Naruto What If channels retell the story of their namesake anime with a twist. Check it out if you're interested. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in today's excellent content production. Their details can be found in the description below. Lastly, if you're interested in what we do here at We the Celestials, I'd like to extend an invitation to join the team. The only caveat is that we only accept members who are 16 years or older to join our crew. You can sign up for whatever category fulfills your interests by joining the recruitment Discord using the link in the description below. We're always looking for new members to join us. Well, yeah, that's it from us for today's video. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. I've been the Spirit of Ice, telling all of you guys to have a great day.